I think particularly with us women, we're really keen to, know what our roles and responsibilities are from the beginning and be able to look at that space. So that's where I would start. I would look at, as a leader of that team, look at what each team member can bring to the team. Some of those team members you're going to need to help, and some of them are going to run with it, right? And you're going to learn from them, and you just sit back and kind of let it happen. But that's kind of the thoughts on how you would build that team to begin with, is learning those roles and responsibilities, learning what your team members are good at, and letting them shine. I don't know, Deanna, if you have any additional thoughts you want to add to that.
I do. I do. Thank you so much. And that's such valuable insight. I'll add that connection, I believe, with your team, whether they're new or they're seasoned on the team, really begins before a first meeting in a virtual environment and how you communicate across the regions or where your team sits. It's really how you as a leader show up. Whether it's, and I know this sounds very elementary, but your calendar invite, the way you prepare and your follow through, people read your tone in your emails, in your meeting request, your attention to detail as a leader, and then also your curiosity long before you show up and you execute any type of meeting in a virtual environment or communicating in a virtual environment. So really one of the things that I focus on is really just asking those questions, asking one more question about someone's day, really making it warm, making them feel like they belong before you get into the meat of the meeting. Because I believe that you get so much more out of that when in a very productive environment, if you have that opportunity to have that personal space. So yeah.
Hard to do that.
Terry, did you have a comment? All right. Well, thank you so much for both of that. I loved hearing Rhi and your summary about meeting people where they're at and helping them if they need it, or allowing others to help each other in that space. And then Deanna really bringing together that concept of creating belongingness from even before the initial meetings begin. So those are really, really good tips. Here, as we talk about all of this, maybe we could focus a little bit on what everyday leadership looks like in the virtual setting, and how do you foster those connections, and really build and create an environment where people can feel like they belong, across the board. So perhaps we could go into some authenticity here, and how do you come across as less transactional? We're here for this meeting or that initiative, and really get into more of that relational space where we can demonstrate our authenticity, our care for others, our wanting to be in community and to align around a purpose for work purposes or even outside of work and community. So could you talk a little bit about what role does authenticity play in virtual leadership, and how do you ensure that your communication and style feels genuine across the digital space? So
That's
Deanna, can you lead us on?
that's Yeah, I'm very excited about this question because authenticity and the dots kind of connected is that's my word. I choose a word every year, and the word this year for me is authenticity. And it really does affect virtual leadership. You cannot fake connection. And one of the things that we talked about in our prep call is you can spot performative leadership. And for me, you can fake it, but people will know it in a virtual environment. Whether you're in a virtual environment or you're sitting in an office, one of the things that I know that separates me from others is just my attitude, and I'm very energetic, and I'm always wanting to learn about someone else, and I always put everyone else before myself, and learning from them and learning what makes them tick and learning how I can support them, learning what do they have going on either personally or professionally that we might be able to, again, everyone is dealing with something different, whether it's aging parents or something going on at home or something going on at work. And so you have to meet them where they're at. But you will always know when I am being authentic, because that is 100% where I come from, whether I'm in a boardroom, whether I'm on a Zoom, whether I'm in a Teams, whether I'm here, I will always show up as my true self. So a lot of what I try to instill in my team is really wanting to take an opportunity to listen, making sure that we're listening more than we speak as leaders, because we really want to hear from our team members. Another thing that I really started to understand is we went through the pandemic. I was very rigid on cameras on, let's do cameras on. And I think that I've started to take a step back from that, the way that I lead with that. And now I just turn my camera on. And if I turn my camera on, it's like the domino effect. Things just happen. It's culturally now, okay. And whether you're at home, in the office, you hear a dog bark, a baby cry, it's okay because we're all human, right? So that for me is very important, and just being very genuine, making sure that you understand your employees and your team members. And, again, like I said, everybody has something going on in their lives. Work always comes second in my world with my team. If anything that's going on in their life, whether it's health or anything, it always is priority. And I think my team, some of my team is on, and I hope that they'll be able to vouch for that.
Yes.
I see a so true, Deanna. There's also a comment here. Lori Jo, do you want to come off of mute and share what you shared in the chat?
Sure. I did a lot of leading before I started my own agency about 7 years ago. And as part of what I've always done, even if the team is 20 or 30 people, is a morning huddle. Each team sometimes, or the full group, depending on what day it is. And everybody, maybe there's a question. Maybe I would do things like turn to the right and give that person a compliment. I don't care what it is. It could be you like their shoes. It could be they did some great favor for you yesterday. That's fine. So there's always some weird little thing in there like that. And then there's time for social. So we
Love that.
fully allow a 45-minute start of work meeting because it's so critical. And then we encourage phone calls over quick emails. If you got a quick question, pick up the phone, because that connection and talking is much more personal and makes you feel connected. So, and I also give the whole team Fridays off all through the summer, but that's just me. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
When you can do summer Fridays, even if it's like just 2 to 5 and everybody makes up their hours, you will get an incredible amount of loyalty out of that, because people just love it, even if they just get to start the weekend early. And my team, they work like they're on vacation, like they're getting ready to go on vacation all summer long. So everything gets done. So
That's
yeah.
fantastic. I love that.
Fun stuff.
We do a weekly meeting globally with our team every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. And Zareen leads that. And the first thing that we start off with is give us one thing, like one thing that doesn't involve work, right? And it could be what you did last weekend, what you're doing this coming weekend, a huge milestone you accomplished at work, anything like that. It sets the tone and lets everybody relax a little bit. And then we just plow through what we need to get done. So that's a Lori Joy, I like that too.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah, I love those things. We used to do when I was back in Powertrain, we used to assign 10 minutes, and someone had the agenda task to bring in something fun. And it was one of my younger members of the team, and she loved it. Every month she would do research and she would get us all together globally doing a fun activity for 10 minutes. And it just went so far.
Love that.
Thank you, Rhi. And then also here we have a couple more comments asking for weekend highlights on Mondays are the best. And we do that too. The best thing happened to you professionally and personally last week. It's a great way to start the week. I know in my team, we've done things like, maybe something that you'd like to share that's great, but it's also to be in the okay club. So what do you feel okay about today? And then do you have a gratitude moment to share with a colleague? Because we all help each other, and sometimes we don't elevate that gratitude enough, and it really helps people understand how they belong to each other. Rhi, I'd also like to dive in and just ask you a little bit about digital distraction and how you help your team members and the people that you're connecting with pay attention. I think I read a stat that the average attention span is between 8 seconds and 3.5 minutes, depending on which article you read. And what tips do you have to keep people engaged through this two-dimensional space? And what suggestions do you have if people feel distracted to really stay in tune with the conversation at hand?
Yeah, it's a hard one, right? I mean, we are all faced with so many things going on. We're living in this world where, you know, you've got so many notifications and beeps and text messages and all this world that is so connected, right? So it really I don't feel like there is a way to solve this. Obviously, the more that you can engage directly with individuals, I think they're going to pay more attention, they're going to stay more awake. But, you know, we've all had those moments when we're on conference calls and we're not directly involved in the conversation. We turn our camera off, we go on mute, and we get something done, right? Let's face it, we are all guilty, right? Everybody does it because we feel that we need to keep going, right? We feel we need to answer that text message or, you know, finish that one slide that needs to be delivered or whatever it is, right? But yeah, I'm not confessing to have any answers on this, and I'd really appreciate any suggestions because for me, it's, you know, the more that you engage directly with the people, you know, you will get that return, you know, so the more time and effort you give to people, they will return. But we are all guilty of turning off, right? And looking at something else and looking at the next shiny thing that comes our way. I think it's a very hard thing.
I think that it's very, very difficult. I can't agree with you more, Rhi. I mean, between, you know, the watch and then now I have one of these and then I have the phone and then, you know, I mean, everything on you is connected, right? One of the things that I'm working on is I'm just trying to slow down. I'm just trying to slow down and try to focus on the task or the conversation or the meeting. I will take my phone and I will put it in my purse in my credenza if it's something that I know is going to be a distraction, because I know how I feel when I'm presenting and somebody turns their camera off. So if you know that they're on camera and then they took their camera off, you know, they've checked out, right? I mean, as not 100%, but you know that they're multitasking. So for me, I try to not do that because I know how I feel when people do it to me. So that's like one of the biggest things. And turning your camera on, I know we keep talking about this, but it really does keep you engaged because you can't look down at your phone. You can't, it's just very difficult because if you are working while you're on camera, you know, your eyes start doing this, that people know that you're reading too. So the biggest thing is just to slow down and just try to live in that moment with that particular meeting or that connection or that meeting with your team. Your one-on-ones, I have one-on-one meetings with my team every week, and again, if we slow down, and those are trying, if they're local, we do them in person. If my team in Mexico or my team in Europe, I always make sure that I have everything away because I only get a certain amount of time with those team members every week. And so that's the first time we start off is, how was your weekend? And then, you know, anything, you know, exciting happening in the office, and how's the morale in the office, and what have you what are you proud of this week? And we get through some of that. And then at the very end, I'm like, what are you doing this weekend? And then, you know, you end it on a really good note. And so for me, it's just live in the moment and slow down.
Yeah, I recently followed a guy, I think it's on LinkedIn. He's an Australian communications coach. I'll put his name in the chat because I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but his name is Vin Gyan.
Ooh.
And what he said was simple but resonated with me. So it's a simple thing that we can all do, and it doesn't have to be preparing for a big presentation or anything, but you know, the purpose is that is record ourselves. Right. So record ourselves making a speech or even just presenting a slide or whatever it is. You know, there's numerous ways we can do it on our phones, on our computers, but record ourselves with video and then play back that recording with turning the phone off or turning it over, closing the screen. So we're not looking at ourselves, we're just listening. So we're listening to what that message was. And then do the same thing. So play that back with the audio switched off, but just the visuals, right? So we're seeing this playback in two different ways. The third thing to do is get it transcribed. And again, there's all these tools now that make life so much easier than the days when we had to type everything out, right? So transcribe what we said. And by transcribing it, you know, these AI tools will transcribe every and R and like and all these filler words that we use. And by reading them just as text, we will be amazed at how much we do it. And I'm catching myself do it now, right? So I'm 100% guilty of doing this. So these three different methods, right? So listening, watching, and then reading what we do, I think can help us all help in our delivery. And it's something that we can all accomplish in a 30-minute time span, right? It's a simple kind of thing that we can try. But it will help on that delivery. And by us delivering our messages better, our audience will connect to us better. Right. That's the way when I read this work that he does, he's really helping us to engage and connect, and particularly in this virtual space where it's so challenging.
That I'm going to do that.
I'm going to write his name in the chat because he's fascinating. He has so many tips and tricks that are really, really cool.
Thank you, Rhi. That is actually also a hallmark of Toastmasters training. So for who are interested in Toastmasters, there are different tracks, and they actually recommend that as well. So I'm hearing you both say that the voice matters, the visual matters, the intent versus the actual impact matters in developing these relationships, and our behavior helps drive our personal brand and how we appear maybe as a whole person. So could you talk a little bit about relationship building as a whole, and how do these elements come together in a leader's personal brand and influence how effective they can be in a virtual marketplace? So what might be some best practices for strengthening our brand, our authenticity, and how we come across to others?
So from my perspective, your personal brand it's not your title, it's not your bio, it's that lasting like feeling or impression that people walk away with after they interact with you. I just a funny story is I sit in an area in the office that is far away from an area in the engineering department, and they'll tell me that they know when I'm not in the office because they can't hear my laugh. And then they know if my planets aren't aligning one day and I am in the office, they'll walk by and say, "You're not laughing," or "We can't hear you. So what's going on?" So for me, that I know what I'm portraying and I know my energy. So I really want to leave that lasting impression. And especially in a virtual environment. I know that's at home, in the office, but at home or in the virtual world, you have to show up consistently, and how you make people feel. I just keep going back to, we really don't know. Everyone is dealing with something. And if your virtual environment is very black and white, and as Rhi said, if you can't find that gray, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to build moments and successes with your team. Every video call, every team's message, it all leaves an impression. So, really knowing how to navigate that interaction with your team, I think is going to be very important.
Yeah, I totally agree, Deanna. It's I think having such a bubbly personality like yourself, your personal brand is so clear and transparent, right? But there are some introverts amongst us who, it's difficult, right, to push their personal brand and even to know what it is, right? To really think about yourself and to think, you know, what do I stand for? What do I want people to think of when they think of me? Right. So I feel like that does take time and energy of reflection. You know, again, going back to the virtual workspace, one thing that I have always tried to do is to be responsive, right? If whether it's a vacation request or a expense report or just a question that comes in, you know, if somebody has taken the time and needs a response from me, like that has always been something that I've thought about to be my personal brand, was that I need to get back to them because they've spent the energy and time to contact me. So I can't have them lingering, right? And typically speaking, when I have them lingering is because I have no idea what the answer is, right? But yeah, I think the personal brand question, it's a hard one. It's not so transparent for everybody, but it is something that we can all take back and think about how we can, you know, develop those kind of examples of how we live through it.
You brought up a very good point too, is every team member that sits within a team and that you lead, whether in person or virtual, more so virtual, is I communicate different with every single person on my team because I know how they're going to respond, right? So if you are a leader who has just a very consistent way of communicating and it's only one dimensional, I think that there might be an opportunity just to think a little bit differently because everyone receives information differently. And for me, I know if I need something from my team, I know how to approach. I know the tone and the way that I communicate. I know how to do that with each individual person. And it's all about custom communication because, again, each person has their own authentic self. And so we have to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at and be able to respect that and get work done and have that relationship building and be professional in any environment. So I do communicate completely different with each one of my team members, but when we're together as a team virtually, we all have fun and we all know how to respect one another. So it's all about custom communication and getting to know each individual on your team.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Althea, would you like to come off of mute and share your comment?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I was just saying that learning different communication styles is super important and it's truly appreciated and it's such a valuable trait to have in a leader because it just changes like how you view them and knowing that they care how you're making an impact into that other person. So I just wanted to say it's really important. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I gotta emulate the comment in the chat about situational leadership. This book is really, really good. It's such an eye-opener. It just, you know, kind of to Deanna's point, right? We're not all the same. We don't all appreciate the information being delivered in the same way. Sometimes we just have to take time to respect, you know, what other people want. If we want something from them, then we've got to deliver a message in a certain way. But that book is well worth the read.
I'm adding it to my list.
Me as well. And so, you know, you just talked about responsiveness, like developing that base level relationship continuum and custom communication. I'm going to tag these words in my vocabulary because I think they're just great to remember. And we heard from Althea about care, that it demonstrates care. So now you just talked about having a goal, Rhi, or something that you're working on that you need to work towards. So let's go from broad to maybe a little bit more specific. Everybody here has situations where they're maybe looking for an approval. Maybe they're in business development trying to get that second call. They're having an informational conversation with someone and they'd like to be invited back. Maybe they're in procurement and they need to get a deal through. So could you talk a little bit about some different types of scenarios, such as maybe having an upcoming negotiation or an important internal meeting, And how do people go, how can they prepare for those types of communications? And what would you suggest as being some great thought starters to planning for that situation?
Yeah, so rehearse, rehearse, rehearse has always been my thing, right? Typically speaking, I will write the script like word for word to begin with, right? Literally, like go through the thought process in my head and write the script. Then I will go back to the script and I will highlight or bold or whatever the key words, the key messages. And if I'm presenting like on a stage with speaker's notes or whatever, I will go back and I will literally write bullet points just with those bolded words, because at that point I've rehearsed, rehearsed, rehearsed. I know the topic. It's my typically it's my topic, right? But I need to still do it. I need to still do it every time. Even if I'm giving the same slides over and over again to different audiences, I still need to rehearse. So by writing it out in full, then bolding where I feel are the key points, and then pulling those into just the thought starters that just have to get the brain working, I found is a great way. And like I said before, this Vin Yang, and I'm terrible reading his name, but I felt that that was a really good methodology to use, right? Particularly if you haven't seen yourself present, you know, go through that terror of watching yourself on video, right? None of us like it. We all hate it, but we have to see what the others see, right? We have to be able to kind of understand the quirks. Like some people think that I don't use my hands a lot, and I feel I'm using my hands all the time. But until you see yourself doing it, it's very hard to really have that realization. So those would be my things: rehearse, 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 and then go follow Gyang and read some of his stuff. It's really good about how you can prepare yourself.
That's great. I echo everything that you said. Rehearsing is key. And one of the things that I also before I go into any meeting or negotiation is I take a moment to really ground myself with just a key question of, you know, what's going to resonate with the audience? How do I present myself with my team or in a negotiation? Are they more, you know, serious? Do I need to kind of level set some of my energy? The answer is no, because I will not change who I am. Want to be my true authentic self. But you know, again, I think it's just very important to, you know, what do they need to hear? And you know, right now, it's not about the KPI, it's about, you know, really understanding how you can influence them. And the biggest thing is rehearsing. I would 100% agree with you. I opened up one of our global leadership conference a couple years ago, and I had an honor to be able to welcome everyone, and it was a room of 160 general managers and other executives of the company. And having that wonderful opportunity, you definitely need to rehearse. So there was a lot of rehearsing going on, a lot of recording, a lot of feedback. But if you do it, you build that confidence, and then you deliver in a way that you can feel confident and comfortable and authentic, and people see that and they really resonate with it. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and you can tell, you know, you can tell the people who get on stage and are reading speakers' notes, and they know their material, they know their topic, but the nerves get ahead of them.
Yeah.
Right. So they end up reading, 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 and that's when it just becomes, you know, a little bit dull, a little bit monotonous, because they're not living their topic, right? They're in front of 200 people and they're caving in with their nerves and they're just reading the screen. And that's when the rehearsal really helps. I even find I rehearse in front of my husband. He's a retired policeman. He has no idea about automotive, right? But I rehearse in front of him, and he, you know, he doesn't necessarily understand everything I say, but he does critique, and he says, listen, you know, you're moving too much, or you're not moving enough, or you weren't clear when you said this word, you're talking too fast, you know, all those things that, you know, we know in our minds, but when we hear somebody telling us it does help, right? It helps us adjust.
Agree. And if you are in a position where you are running rehearsals, or you have an opportunity to listen to rehearsals with executive leadership, and they're scripted, the one big piece of advice that I give them is nobody knows what you're going to say. So if you don't read from the script and you just go off script and you are a little bit more authentic and people can really resonate with you, nobody's going to know. It's just like planning a wedding, right? Nobody knows behind the scenes what didn't go right that day, right? You're the only one as the bride or the groom. It's the same thing, right? So for me,
Yeah.
I have to take my own advice though, because sometimes I beat myself up. Like, I should have said that and I should have said that. And then at the end of the day, I said, you know something? I got my points across. Nobody knows what I forgot.
No one knows any different. Yeah,
Right? Nobody's gonna
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
This is so true. I think so many of the times we try to strive for perfection, but a little bit of progress every time is great. And even if it's a catastrophic failure, which very rarely occurs, it's a opportunity, right? So
Absolutely.
the next opportunity to practice in front of the bathroom mirror, and it is horrible to actually have to look at yourself and hear yourself speak. So there's a couple comments I'd like to just share here in the chat, and I know our time is coming here to an end. There's reading a great book called Learn Better by Ulrich Boser. He reinforces this practice point. Rehearsing is far more effective than reviewing notes over and over. PowerPoint, a great technique to battle nerves, and that's from Amy Cuddy. She has a famous TED Talk about that. Althea shares, me and my husband also do this. We help with the best course to deliver presentation, what the best order to approach topics.
Love that.
A yes there, and then people appreciate authenticity more than perfection. So thank you all for your comments. And I would also add, if you really want the brutal truth, practice in front of a teenager, and it might be a little scary, but they'll definitely tell you where we're at. So let's just take maybe the next 7 minutes to talk through the next question, and then we'll hand it over to Jennifer to help close us out. So you've talked a lot about, authenticity and, getting through even to a specific situation and really planning to have a successful communication, both from the voice and the visual. So could we talk a little bit about the broader landscape of global teams? We're working in a very volatile, very dynamic environment. Those are probably nice words to describe some of the things we're all living through right now. What are some of the unique situations and challenges that you see today or that you've faced of working in a virtual environment, and how did you overcome them?
Rhi, you want to take that first?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the obvious ones, right? So the time zones is a killer. You know, I'm leaving for China actually tomorrow morning, and over the past month, I think I've had at least 3 evening calls with China every week, right? And I talk to them more than I talk to my husband, and it seems really bizarre, but I probably do, right? Because I'm spending an hour and a half, 2 hours with them every night. And it's a challenge because for them it's early morning, for me it's night, or vice versa. There is no other way around it, right? And unfortunately for the Asians, the only good way to get everybody on a call is early morning Eastern time, right? So that it's always nighttime for the Asians, and it is so horrible to see them every night. They live in smaller housing. You see other family members that are trying to go about their evening activities in the background, and it is horrible, right? It's challenging to live like that. They've come to accept it, most of them who work in the automotive world. But that's definitely a challenge. Holidays is another one, right? If you really added up all the global holidays, we would have very few work days, right? It's and to keep track of them all, right? To understand that in India they're celebrating X, and in Austria they're celebrating Y, and all of these things, right? So it's hard to keep track of that and acknowledge that, for some people, a holiday is a turn everything off time.
Yeah.
For us in North America, typically, at a leadership level, we're still connected to our phones. We're still responding to emergency things. We're still doing some kind of work, but in other countries, That's not the case, right? So just understanding that balance, that's obviously important. But I would say the biggest challenge that I've ever faced is that cultural difference, right? Particularly with your more, I'm going to call it introverted populations, and I know that that's not a thing, but there are cultures that will not stand up and tell you what they think is right or wrong or indifferent. Here in North America, we all speak our minds, right? For the most part, whether you like it or not, you're going to get the feedback at some point, but that is not necessarily the case in other cultures, particularly in that group setting, right? So if you're asking a big team, hey, how did you think this went? How did you think that went? You're probably only going to get your positive feedback. Your Asian participants, you're going to have to call them separately, right? You're going to have that one-on-one and say, listen, what did you really think? What did you really get from this experience? Or and even then, even on that one-on-one, sometimes it's hard to trigger that feedback and get that very transparent way of working. But the more you talk to them, the more you ask them, even ask them to write it down, and you don't have to give it face to face. There's all these other things that you can do. For me, that cultural difference is one of the biggest challenges for global. Deanna, I don't know if you've had similar experiences or
For
something
sure. Yeah.
else.
When I first started in my career at the Steel Market Development Institute, everything was very on off, black, white, yes, no. And I had a leader that I highly respect still till this day. He's one of my I love looking up to him and what he shared with me. He sat me down and he said, within 5 years of my career, he said, if you continue to walk down this path, you'll be dead before you know it, because I was very, very rigid. And he said, you need to find gray in your life. And I said, yep, you're right. And ever since I heard that, I have been trying to navigate it. Take me to Martinrea. It has, when I first started, it was, again, I tried to go back into that on off black white situation, and my team, as we grew, really made me think, we have members on not only virtually on my team, but also on different calls that we get on in a virtual environment that just experienced devastating news. The toll that's going on right now with the current administration, natural disasters, everything that's going on. So I really tried to focus on, teaching myself to lead with empathy, agenda second. And that's 100%. Again, I ask a lot of questions. It goes beyond like, how are you? It's not that, it's like, how are you doing this week? If you know that somebody's dealing with something, personally. The culture has been a growth opportunity for me, and I've embraced it. I'm immersing myself and highly respecting it because, again, culture, and then also time zone, because we have team members in Japan, we have team members in Mexico. So you're trying to find that sweet spot of how you can still be
Hard,
productive,
yeah.
right?
Really hard.
And trying to get things done. But another really big component of how we lead in a virtual environment is making sure that we celebrate those small wins with our team. So if it's a birthday, if it's an anniversary, if it's just something that we know that a big milestone that just came up or a big project that was just completed, in a virtual environment, we celebrate it. Locally, you can do it because you have you have everybody there, but in a virtual environment, you have to get creative in how you do that to make sure that you are showing respect for your team in a virtual environment, showing respect for and celebrating all of the collective work that's being done in the environment. So the biggest, we talk a lot about, humanizing work, and it's not just a concept. We have to lead with passion. And even if you're sitting in Mexico or Europe on my team, we make sure that we have a level of respect across the board. And that's our number one guiding principle, is making sure that we are, the golden rule of treating everyone with dignity and respect. And I try to live it and breathe it and embrace it every single day.
Awesome.
You just made me think of the book, The Happiness Advantage, where they
Yes.
talk research that was done that people on average need to have 7 times more positive feedback in order to be able to process one correction.
Mhm.
Think about that. it's not that often that I could remember that I've received 7 pieces of positive communication for, the myriad of things that have to happen during the day. So, um, that's, uh, that's a really good point, just to remember to humanize that experience from all aspects. Just a couple quick comments here that came in. Ashwini asked about, would be great to understand your thoughts on difficult conversations virtually. Ashwini, I think you just planted the seeds for a take 2, so I think we need to invite Deanna and Rhi back, because that could be multiple sessions. But any quick observations or things? I think one thing I would just add to what you both shared is, don't surprise people,
Mm.
if you're going to have a difficult conversation. Give them a heads up, whether it's just personally, one-on-one, send them a note, let them know. But I'd love to hear a quick thought from each of you on that topic.
The difficult conversations in a virtual environment are challenging, because yes, you can see them through the screen, but you don't get all the nonverbal cues and how you can navigate that conversation. Typically, when I have to have a difficult conversation, I'll always start off with something very positive, and be able to start it. I call it the sandwich effect. So you start off with some really good positive reaffirmation and, positive comments, and then you slowly start entering into a situation where you need to be able to have that difficult conversation. And again, every person when I communicate, is going to be completely different. Some I can come right out and we can, no BS, let's just get to the heart of it. And others, you have to kind of build that anticipation, have that conversation. And then when you exit out of that conversation, you have to be able to end it in a positive note as well. So that's the sandwich, positive, positive, and then the challenge conversation in the middle. That's how I try to lead those difficult conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Deanna. I did I don't know if anyone on this call has ever followed any of the CCL leadership training. I had the huge fortune to go to a couple of those sessions, and they talk about this SBI. So it's situation, behavior, impact, is this way to talk through difficult topics. So it's essentially you're talking to the person about the situation, just in broad terms, not giving any expressions or whether it was good or bad. Then you talk about the behavior that this individual had in that situation. And then you talk about the impact it had on other people. So it kind of like encapsulates the difficulty of the conversation, because you have, I'm going to call it an agenda, right? Because it's difficult to talk about some of these things. So it's a little bit easier for the person who's transmitting the message, because you're giving it like these 3 chapters, if you like. So you're talking about the situation that happened, maybe, I don't know, I can't even think of a bad thing right now, but you're talking about it in absolute terms. And then what was the behavior of the individual and how did it impact everyone else? And then they get to think, oh, maybe I should have done it differently. And they come back to you in the end with, oh yeah, I was wrong. I should have done this, that, or the other. It's something that they kind of learn to reflect on. So I found that method is pretty good.
I love that.
That's great. I think that would also be something we would love to have you both come back for, and we could even dive into some specific examples. Well, I can't thank you both enough for lending your expertise and just sharing so many insights. There's a lovely comment in here, Zareen, if you want to share real quick, and then we're going to pivot over to Jennifer, and I'm going to pull up the slide deck here. But an incredible amount of thanks to you, Rhi, who is departing on a trip overseas tomorrow. Or yesterday while she was talking to me and packing. Such is the life we live today. And Deanna, and I know you're both incredibly busy, and you've been so genuine and authentic, and even sharing, ways that we can be more successful, and even sharing things that you've experienced yourself, and that makes it so meaningful for all of us. So on behalf of everyone here, I just wanted to express my sincere thanks to both of you for your leadership and commitment to helping others rise. We say we rise when we lift others, and you've done that for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You inspire me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing experience working with yourself, Anne and Deanna. It's been a really, really nice adventure.
Really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Yes, so Anne, when you get those slides pulled up, again, we want to say thank you to our phenomenal speakers, Deanna and Rhi. I took notes during this, so I'm really looking forward to following up on some of the notes with my team. And I want to thank our PD team, Sharon, Carlotta, Shamika, and Anne. And Anne, you did a fabulous job moderating. And you can see our really cool slides and advertising done by Axel Cooley. And our registration was handled by Roseanne. Thank you to everybody who helped make this happen. And thank you to our sponsors, Magna, Forvia, Christian Brothers Automotive, Martinrea, Foley, Henkel, and Trust Think. And we want to invite you to our upcoming events, and we want you to know members and visitors are always welcome. Everyone is welcome. And our upcoming events are Saturday, May 10th, we'll have our 3rd annual Ignite Your Genius Conference, focusing on thriving through change. It's a half-day event in the morning, and it's meant to inspire you. Then in June, we'll have a virtual event with Lisa Copeland. And then in August, we'll have the 29th annual Swinging for Scholarships golf outing, a must attend event. So thank you all for coming today. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Hey, Deanna, I saw your daughter was on this today.
Yeah. Yes.
That is so cool.
She's a member of AWAF.
Hey, you know what? I think it's awesome.
And a coaching program participant, prior participant as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.